Hi everyone. Today, we are going to learn how to use Microsoft Excel in just 15 minutes. Excel is the perfect tool to analyze your data and get valuable insights from it. But when you open it, there are so many different menus and so many different buttons. What do they all do? In this video, we're going to make sense of them so you can start understanding the story behind your data. Let's start with how you can even get Excel. There are two different ways you can get started. The first way is to navigate to excel.new in your web browser. You'll need to log in, but that's entirely free, and it will drop you into a brand new spreadsheet directly in your browser. Excel on the web has most of the functionality that you'll find in the desktop app, and typically, new features hit the web version first. The second way is to install Excel on your desktop, but you will need to purchase something called Microsoft 365. Start page overview. When you launch Excel for the first time, you'll land on the Start page. In the top left corner, you can jump into a blank new workbook, and we'll do that in a moment. Over on the right side, you'll also see a whole host of different templates. It's worth looking through these to see if any of them meet your needs. Down below, you can get back to recent workbooks you've worked on. At the top, you can search for a workbook, and below that, you'll see all of your recent files. Now let's click into a blank new workbook. 132, cells, columns, and rows. This drops us into a brand new workbook. At first glance, you might notice a lot of rectangles on the screen. These are all referred to as cells. Across the top, you'll notice we have all these different letters. These are called columns. On the left-hand side, you'll see all these numbers going down the screen. These are called rows. The intersection of a column and a row is referred to as a cell. For example, this one is called E7. You start with the column letter and then follow with the row number. In the top left corner, you'll see the cell reference displayed in the name box. You can even change the name, but for now, we'll stick with the default. To make things easier to see, we can zoom in and out. In the bottom right corner, you can click to zoom in or zoom out. You can also press Control and move your mouse wheel up or down. That will zoom in and out as well. My eyes aren't what they used to be, so let's zoom in a little. 2 to 5 entering data. Let's start now by entering some data. I'll click into cell A1 and type in a header, sales. To move to the next cell, I can click on it with my mouse. I could also press Tab or the right arrow key on my keyboard, and that will move me to the next cell. Here, I'll type in date. To move down, I can press the down arrow key or enter. I want to track cookie sales here at the Kevin Cookie Company starting in January 2023. So here, I'll type in January 2023 and hit enter. That's the first month I'll track. I want to track all the way through November 2023. Of course, I could go through and type in every single month, but Excel is smart. It detects patterns. Here, it sees that I entered a date. When I click into cell B2, you'll notice there's a small rectangle in the bottom right corner. When I hover over it, my cursor changes. I can press and hold on that little square and drag it down, and Excel will automatically fill in all the different months. This works with dates, and it also works with numbers, as long as Excel can detect a pattern. Entering sales data. Next, we need to enter data for how many cookies we sold. January is by far the worst month for the cookie business. Everyone has a New Year's resolution, and they just don't want to eat cookies. I'll go through and fill in numbers for the rest of the months, and you can follow along. And that's it. As I always say, the cookie business is a good one to be in, but right now it's a little difficult to parse these numbers just at a glance. Ideally, I'd like to have 1,000 separator so it's easier to read. I'll highlight all of these cells, and up on the Home tab within the Home ribbon, right in the center, I can click on this icon to add 1,000 separator. That makes it much easier to tell which numbers are larger and which are smaller. But I don't need these decimal places. We don't sell fractions of cookies here. Up on top, I'll click on this icon, and I can remove the decimal places. Now here's a neat little pro tip. You can press Control-1 on your keyboard, and this opens up the Format Cells dialog. Here you have full control over what the format of the cell is. If you'd like to learn all about the different shortcut keys available in Excel, I've included a link down below that'll show you every possible option. Looking over at my table, I think it would be helpful to provide some context for why January was such a low sales month. I'll click into cell C1 and add another header titled Notes. And here in C2, I'll provide an explanation. New Year's resolution depresses sales. You'll notice that the explanation bleeds over into the adjacent columns, and ideally, I want all of it to fit within column C. I can click on the line between C and D and double-click, and that'll auto-fit the contents, expanding column C automatically. If you have many different columns or many different rows that you'd like to fit to the content, you can click on this icon and then click on any line in between two columns, and that'll auto-fit everything. It's a handy little trick. Hide, and unhide columns. On second thought, I don't know if I even need this column. The management here should already know this information, at least I would hope. On column C, I'll right-click, and this shows me a context menu with different actions I can take. Right down here, I can delete the column, but I'm not sure if I want to get rid of this information. Maybe someone will ask some questions later. Down at the very bottom, I can also hide a column. I'll click on that, and it doesn't remove the data. It's just hidden on the sheet. To show it again, I can highlight these two columns. Right-click and choose Unhide. I can do this with rows as well. Move columns and rows. Looking at all of my data, I actually think it would be better to show the date first, followed by the sales. The good news is that it's very easy to move columns in Excel. I'll highlight all of this data, then press the Shift key on my keyboard and hover over the edge. You'll see that my cursor changes. I can now press my left mouse button and drag this column to a new position. I'll place it to the left of sales, and now we see the date first. Of course, we can't see all of the sales. The cell just isn't wide enough. Right up on top, I'll click on this icon again and expand it so it fits all of the contents. That's exactly how I want it. I also think it would be nice to format this table so it looks better. Up on the top tabs, let's click on Insert. And here we have the option to insert a table. I'll click on that, and here it automatically identifies all of this data. We have headers, so I'll make sure that's checked and then click on OK. Look at that. I now have banded rows, and it's a lot easier to read this table. Over on the right-hand side, under Table Design, we have all different types of styles we can choose from. I'll stick with the default. The benefits of tables go beyond just the look and feel. Right here, I can also add what's called a total row. Here, you see the total down at the bottom. If I click on this little drop-down arrow, I can choose what I want to total up. Let's get a sum of all these sales. Look at that, 75,000 sales. Now, I almost forgot to include December data, and that's by far our best month of the year. It's amazing how people forget about calories during the holidays. Luckily, it's very easy to add rows or columns. I'll click on row 13, then right-click, and here's the option to insert. I'll select that, click into this cell, and here I can drag down, and that'll fill in December. Now let's type in the sales. That was a great month. That feels about right now. Of course, December was a great month, and January was not so good. But just glancing at this table, it's a little hard to tell very quickly. I'll highlight all of these cells, and up on the Home tab in the center, there's something called Conditional Formatting. This allows us to format the cells based on a condition or the underlying data. And we have all sorts of different options here. We could show data bars, color scales, or even define our own rules. For this, let's go with color scales. Let me try this one. It will apply red for lower numbers and green for higher numbers. Now, when I look at this data, I can very quickly tell that December was by far the best month of the year for us. I now want to start analyzing my data, and luckily Excel makes that very easy to do. Analyzing data in Excel is incredibly easy. For example, I want to know what our total sales were in Q1, that is January through March. I can simply highlight these three cells, and down at the bottom on something called the status bar, I can instantly see that total sales were about 12,000. Not bad. I can also go up to the Home tab, and over on the right-hand side, let's click on Analyze Data. This opens up the Analyze Data pane. And the really neat thing here is that I can simply ask questions about my data, and Excel will provide insights. Let's ask, what were total sales in Q1? And I want to see that as a table. And right here I can see the sales, and there it is, 12,000. That makes analysis really easy, and I didn't even have to enter a function or a formula. I'll close out of this pane now. Of course, we can also calculate this on our own. I'll click down into this cell, and let's add up Q1 manually. I'll enter in the equal sign equals. This lets Excel know that we're about to enter a formula. Next, I'll click into cell B2, and you can see it appear in my formula. I want to add this, so I'll enter the plus sign plus and click cell B3, and I want to add that to cell B4. You can see my formula down below. I'll press enter, and there too, we also see that the total was 12,000. Along with addition, you can also do subtraction, multiplication, and division. Functions. Now that was a little cumbersome, clicking into each individual cell that I wanted to add. Alternatively, we can use something called a function. One of the most popular functions is sum. Again, I'll enter the equal sign equals and type in the function name sum. Then I'll open up the parentheses, and here I need to pass in an argument. Basically all the numbers that I want to sum up. Here I'll simply highlight these three cells, so you see B2 through B4, and then close the parentheses and hit enter. There too, we see that the sum is 12,000. Excel has many different functions available. Up at the very top, let's click on the Formulas tab, and over here, we can see some of the most popular functions that you might want to use. Over here, we'll see many different options for functions, so it's well worth looking through to see what you can do with them. Sorting and filtering. As we've been going through this, you might have noticed that we have arrows that appear next to our headers in the table. I'll click on one of the headers, and then let's click on the Data tab. Over here, you can toggle that on or off, but let's leave it on to see what they do. Now let's click on this arrow. This opens up a context menu, and here I can sort my data. Let's sort from largest to smallest. Here I see December, which had the greatest sales, and then we have January down at the very bottom. But let's say I want to restore it to the original order. I'll click on Date, and let's sort from oldest to newest, and right here we're back to where we were. Let's say I only want to look at Q1. I can click on this, and along with sorting, I can also filter my data. I'll click on this to deselect all of these dates, and let's just select Q1, January, February, and March. Click on OK, and here I see my first quarter. And look at the total row. It also tells me that it was 12,000. So this is another way to calculate that. I'll click on this again, and here I can clear the filter. Up to this point, we've just been looking at all of our data in a tabular format, but sometimes a picture or a chart is worth 1,000 words. Let's go up to the Insert tab on top, and right here in the center, you'll see the option for charts. We could insert a recommended chart, or we could choose one of these many different options. I'll click on Recommended Charts, and here it recommends a line chart, which works well with this type of data. I'll click on OK, and this inserts a chart. Now, we can visually see what sales were like throughout the year, and that's a lot easier to parse than raw data. Up on top, we have all sorts of different tools that we can use to customize the way this chart looks. And that's how we use the status bar, the Analyze Data pane, formulas, functions, sorting and filtering, and charts to quickly and powerfully analyze data in Excel, all without needing complex steps. Pivot tables. With pivot tables, you can analyze data simply by dragging and dropping your mouse. Let's click into the table of data on the left-hand side. Then, go up to the Insert tab, and here's the option to insert a pivot table. Let's click on that. Excel automatically identifies all of our data. Let's place the pivot table on a new worksheet, and then click OK. This now drops us into a new worksheet. You can see down below we're in Sheet 2. If we click back into Sheet 1, it will bring us back to our original data. Now let's click into the pivot table. On the right-hand side, you'll notice something called pivot table fields with all these different items. You might recognize these. They are all the different columns that we had in our original data table. Now let's see what we can do with pivot tables. I'll press and hold on sales and drag that down into values. You typically place something in the values area if you want to calculate something. On the left-hand side, I'll zoom in. And here we see the sum of sales, almost 100,000. That's how many sales we had in total. One neat thing you can do here is right-click on that number, go down to Summarize Values By, and see that it's currently set to sum. Let's change that to average to see the average sales over the course of the year. And there we see it's about 8,200 per month. I'll right-click again and go back to sum. On the right-hand side, I could take another item, for example, the date, and drag that down into filters. Here, I can click on the drop-down, just like the drop-down we saw earlier, and filter just to January. I'll click OK, and here we see the 1,000 sales we had in January. Let's remove the filter now. I'll drag that out. Again, you can do all this analysis simply by dragging and dropping. Let's take the date and drag it down into the rows. Now, this looks very similar to what we had on sheet 1. We have the date and the sales. But instead of putting it down this way, I can also drag the date out and place it as columns. Now we see it going across the columns. This lets you visualize your data in different ways very quickly, and it doesn't require much effort to do that. I'll pull these out again, and let's pull the date back into rows. Now here's one more really neat thing you can do. Right now, we see the sum of sales. But let's say I want to know the percentage of sales that each month made up. I can right-click on one of the cells, go down to Show Values As, and select Percent of Grand Total. And there we go. I see that January made up about 1% of our total sales for the year, while December made up 24%, quite a bit more. Pivot tables are such a powerful tool. Now that we've done all this analysis on our cookie sales, I want to share it with the team. In the top right-hand corner, let's click on the Share button, and then select Share Again. You'll need to make sure that your workbook is saved in OneDrive. Once you do that, you can click here and select people from your team who you want to share this workbook with. Once you're done, click on Send. All right, that was just a really quick overview of Excel, but hopefully it gives you enough to start building that muscle in data analysis. To watch more videos like this one, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.